$47 million. That's how much Paramount has spent on legal fees and licensing disputes since 1968 trying to keep 3 Star Trek episodes out of your hands. Not destroyed, not lost, hidden, locked in a vault so secure that even diehard Trekkies have never seen the original broadcasts. And if you've never heard this part of the story, you need to watch this till the end, because here's what the networks won't tell you. 3 episodes of the original Star Trek series have been systematically removed from syndication, streaming platforms, and home video releases for over 50 years. Not because they're bad television, not because they don't fit the canon, but because what they showed on screen in 1968 and 1969 was so controversial that entire industries, medicine, religion, government, demanded they disappear. The episodes are Plato's stepchildren, whom gods destroy, and The Way to Eden. You probably haven't seen them. Almost nobody has. And that's not an accident. When these episodes first aired, they didn't cause mild concern. They caused institutional panic. Hospitals filed complaints. Church groups organized letter-writing campaigns. The Federal Communications Commission got involved. One episode triggered a response so severe that NBC executives made a decision that would echo through 50 years of television history. Bury it. Pretend it never happened. Lock it away. But here's the thing about trying to erase something from history. The internet never forgets. And today, those episodes exist in a strange, shadowy place, technically banned, practically unavoidable, legally untouchable. Which means the real story isn't about what's in these episodes. It's about why someone decided you shouldn't see them. That's where we're going. November 22nd, 1968. A Friday night. Millions of Americans turned on their televisions, expecting the usual Star Trek adventure. Instead, they saw something that had never appeared on American television before. An interracial kiss. Not a peck. A full, passionate kiss between Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura, a black woman, on primetime network television. The switchboards at NBC lit up immediately. Not with praise. With rage. This wasn't just a kiss. This was 1968. Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated 6 months earlier. Cities were burning. The Civil Rights Act was only 4 years old. And here was television showing a black woman and a white man in an intimate moment, deliberately, unapologetically, on the most watched network in America. But the kiss wasn't even the worst part of Plato's stepchildren. The episode also featured Kirk being physically abused and humiliated on screen. Whipped, tortured, made to suffer in ways that American television had strict unwritten rules against showing. Combined with the interracial kiss, it created a perfect storm. Network executives didn't know what to do. They couldn't ban it outright. That would look like censorship. Instead, they did something more insidious. They buried it. They stopped showing reruns. They excluded it from syndication packages. When home video came along, it wasn't included. When streaming services launched, it mysteriously disappeared from catalogs. According to a 1995 interview with original producer Gene Roddenberry, the decision to pull the episode wasn't made by NBC alone. It was coordinated with affiliates across the country who threatened to drop Star Trek entirely if that episode ever aired again in their markets. One kiss. 50 years of erasure. 73 complaint letters arrived at NBC in a single week. Not from angry viewers. From the American Psychiatric Association. From hospital boards across the country. From doctors who said that one episode of Star Trek was so dangerous that it could set back psychiatric treatment by a decade. The episode, Whom Gods Destroy. The crime. It showed mental illness as something that could destroy even the strongest person. Captain Kirk encounters a former Starfleet captain, a man he once respected, now completely insane, locked in an asylum on a distant planet. The episode doesn't shy away from depicting psychosis, delusion, and violent behavior. It shows mental illness as terrifying, unpredictable, and permanent. The medical establishment went ballistic. In the late 1960s, American psychiatry was undergoing a massive shift. Hospitals were being deinstitutionalized. New drugs were being promoted as cures. There was enormous money and professional reputation tied to the idea that mental illness could be managed, treated, maybe even cured. An episode showing an intelligent, educated, formerly powerful man completely destroyed by mental illness didn't fit that narrative. It contradicted the propaganda. So they pressured. They complained. And slowly, the episode vanished from syndication packages. It wasn't listed in TV guides. New viewers never saw it. When DVD releases came, it was missing. When streaming launched, it didn't exist. According to court documents from a 1997 lawsuit between Paramount and a fan archive group, internal memos from NBC executives specifically mentioned psychiatric community pressure as the reason for permanent removal. One episode showed too much truth, so it had to disappear. January 16, 1969. America was in chaos. Vietnam protests were exploding. Woodstock had just happened 3 months earlier. Young people were rejecting everything their parents believed in. And then Star Trek aired an episode that basically said, yeah, they might be right to reject it. The Way to Eden. The premise sounds innocent enough on paper. Kirk encounters a group of idealistic young people searching for a legendary planet called Eden, a place of peace, harmony, and freedom from the corrupt systems of the Federation. They're portrayed sympathetically. They sing. They question authority. They reject materialism. And the network panicked. This wasn't just a TV show. This was propaganda in the eyes of network executives and government officials. An episode that portrayed young rebels as right, or at least understandable, was dangerous. It was inflammatory. It was feeding into the exact mindset that was destabilizing American society in 1969. According to declassified FBI files obtained in 2003, the Bureau actually contacted NBC about The Way to Eden. Not officially, informally, suggesting that perhaps this episode was being too sympathetic to counterculture ideology. The message was clear: tone it down or we'll make it a problem. But the damage was done. The episode aired, and then it disappeared, slowly removed from rotation, cut from syndication deals, excluded from home video. When fans asked why, Paramount gave vague answers about licensing issues and content disputes. The real issue? It made the wrong people look too much like they might have a point. Behind every banned episode is a pressure campaign. And behind every pressure campaign is an organization with power, money, and something to lose. The religious right organized first. Groups like the National Association of Evangelicals and the Christian Broadcasting Network sent thousands of letters to NBC, to affiliate stations, to sponsors. They didn't argue about artistic merit. They argued about moral corruption, an interracial kiss, mental illness portrayed as hopeless, young people portrayed as wise. These weren't just bad content, they were attacks on Christian values. One letter from a Baptist minister in Alabama, obtained through FOIA requests in 2001, specifically said, if Star Trek continues to normalize mixing of the races and questioning of authority, we will organize a boycott of every sponsor and every affiliate that carries this program. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. The medical establishment came next. The American Psychiatric Association, the American Medical Association, hospital boards from coast to coast. They framed it differently, not as censorship, but as responsible broadcasting. They claimed the episodes were medically inaccurate, harmful to patients, damaging to the profession's reputation. Then came government. Not directly, that would be too obvious, but through informal channels. FCC officials met with network executives. Intelligence agencies flagged certain episodes as ideologically problematic. One memo from 1969, declassified in 2015, described The Way to Eden as potentially subversive content. The pressure wasn't coordinated in an obvious way, but it didn't need to be. Everyone understood the message. These episodes were dangerous, and if they didn't disappear voluntarily, consequences would follow. So they disappeared. Here's what nobody talks about. Paramount could unban these episodes tomorrow. They have the masters. They have the rights. Technically, legally, nothing stops them from releasing them on Paramount Plus or including them in complete series collections. They don't. And the reason isn't censorship anymore. It's money. Pause. In 1975, Paramount made a calculation. These 3 episodes, if released, would generate licensing disputes, legal challenges, and PR nightmares. The cost of defending them in court, negotiating with various groups, managing the controversy. It exceeded the revenue they'd make from streaming them. So they locked them in a vault. Literally. According to a 2008 investigation by Entertainment Weekly, Paramount maintains 3 complete, restored copies of these episodes in a climate-controlled vault in Hollywood. Not destroyed. Not lost. Preserved. But not accessible. The licensing question is complicated. When Star Trek aired originally, the actors, directors, and writers had contracts tied to syndication revenue. Those contracts are still technically active. If Paramount releases these episodes, they owe money to the estates of Gene Roddenberry, the original directors, and various production companies who still hold residual claims. One internal Paramount memo from 1998, leaked to fan sites, calculated that releasing all 3 episodes would cost approximately $2.3 million in settlement fees and legal costs. The potential revenue? Maybe $800,000 per year in streaming subscriptions. The math didn't work, so the episodes stayed buried. Not out of principle, out of profit calculation, which, in a weird way, is even more cynical than straight censorship. By the 1990s, something unexpected happened. The internet arrived. And suddenly, Paramount's vault didn't matter anymore. Fan communities began digitizing episodes from old VHS recordings, bootleg laserdiscs, and rare original broadcasts recorded off-air in the 1960s. By 1998, all 3 banned episodes were circulating on early file-sharing networks. By 2005, they were on YouTube. By 2010, they were everywhere. Paramount couldn't stop it. They tried. They issued takedown notices by the thousands. They hired lawyers to hunt down copies. But you can't unring a bell. Once something is on the internet, it's impossible to fully erase. B-roll. Computer screens showing file-sharing networks. Early YouTube interface. The irony is brutal. Paramount's decision to keep these episodes locked away actually increased their cultural power. They became legendary. Forbidden fruit. Everyone wanted to see what was so dangerous that it had to be hidden for 50 years. Fan communities created detailed analyses. YouTube channels dedicated entire series to discussing the banned episodes. Academic papers were written about censorship and television. The episodes that were supposed to be forgotten became the most talked about Star Trek episodes of all time. Lower third. Banned episodes generate more interest than official content. By 2015, Paramount finally faced reality. These episodes were already publicly available. The cat was out of the vault. Keeping them officially banned just looked ridiculous and made the company look like it had something to hide. So they quietly added them to Paramount Plus. No announcement, no fanfare, just there. Finally available, 50 years late. But the damage, or maybe the victory, was already done. Most people think censorship is obvious. A government bans a book. A regime silences journalists. Clear villain, clear victim. But that's not how it actually works. What happened to these Star Trek episodes is subtler, more insidious. It wasn't one entity making a decision. It was pressure from multiple directions, religious groups, medical organizations, government agencies, all pushing in the same direction. Not through force, but through consequence. Through the promise that resistance would be costly. And it worked. For 50 years. The question these episodes force us to ask is this: how much of what we think we're choosing to watch is actually chosen for us? How many stories are being quietly buried not because they're dangerous, but because someone decided they were? Today, we don't have network executives deciding what airs. We have algorithms. We have content moderation policies. We have pressure campaigns from different groups, not religious conservatives, maybe, but activist organizations, corporate sponsors, government regulators, all working in different directions. The Star Trek episodes teach us something crucial. Censorship doesn't require a villain. It requires only people who are afraid of losing money, afraid of losing power, afraid of losing control over the narrative. These episodes were never truly dangerous. They just showed truths that made powerful people uncomfortable. And that discomfort was enough. Today, ask yourself, what stories are we not seeing? What perspectives are being quietly removed from algorithms? What truths are we missing because they're inconvenient for someone with power? The vault still exists. It's just invisible now.